Australia is a nation forged by ancient traditions and bold modernity, a land where the world's oldest continuous cultures meet the dynamism of a global democracy. From the sun-baked outback to the glittering harbours of Sydney and Melbourne, Australia pulses with a unique blend of Indigenous heritage, British colonial legacy, and multicultural vibrancy. Its story begins more than 65,000 years ago with the arrival of Aboriginal Australians, whose spiritual connection to the land remains a cornerstone of national identity. European settlement in 1788 introduced Western institutions, but also set the stage for a complex journey toward reconciliation and multicultural harmony. Geopolitically, Australia stands as a critical player in the Indo-Pacific, balancing alliances with the United States, India, Japan, and Southeast Asia while navigating the rise of China and shifting global power structures. Its strategic location makes it a linchpin for regional stability, with a growing emphasis on multilateral cooperation and regional security. Initiatives like Indo-Pacific Endeavour, which underscores Australia's commitment to peace and prosperity across the region. Economically, Australia remains resilient but faces headwinds from global trade tensions and a slowing China-driven commodity boom. GDP growth is projected at around 2.1% in 2025, supported by strong immigration and public demand, though inflation remains near target and the nation grapples with diversifying its trade and industrial base to reduce overdependence on key partners. Australia's economy is marked by a robust services sector, resource exports, and a burgeoning tech ecosystem, all underpinned by a stable democratic system and rule of law. Culturally, Australia is a mosaic of traditions, languages, and lifestyles. Its cities are hubs of creativity and innovation, while its rural regions retain a deep connection to the land and Indigenous knowledge. The Australian way of life is defined by a love of nature, a spirit of egalitarianism, and an openness to global influences, a nation that has learned to thrive on its diversity while facing the challenges of an ever-changing world. The boy from Camperdownburn on March 2, 1963. In the heart of Sydney, Anthony Albanese's story begins not in privilege, but in the resilience of struggle. Raised by his mother, Mary Ann Ellery, in a modest public housing complex in Camperdown, Albanese's early years were shaped by hardship, determination, and the quiet strength of a single parent. His mother, battling chronic rheumatoid arthritis and working part-time as a cleaner, instilled in him the values of compassion, fairness, and the relentless pursuit of justice. The family survived on disability and age pensions, a reality that would later fuel Albanese's passion for social equity and reform. Camperdown, an inner west suburb known for its diversity and working-class grit, was more than just a backdrop. It was Albanese's classroom. Here, he witnessed the daily struggles of ordinary Australians, forging a deep empathy for the marginalized and a hunger to create a fairer society. His formative years were marked by both loss and revelation. The early death of his grandfather, a brief and traumatic marriage between his mother and an abusive stepfather, and the eventual discovery that his father was not lost to an accident, but was an Italian steward from a shipboard romance. Education became Albanese's lifeline. He attended St. Joseph's Primary School and St. Mary's Cathedral College, where he excelled academically and began to develop his political consciousness. Working part-time selling newspapers, he learned the value of hard work. At just 15, Albanese joined the Australian Labour Party, founding a Labour club at his high school and setting his sights on a future in public service. His childhood, defined by adversity and hope, laid the foundation for a leader who would one day stand at the helm of a nation, driven by the belief that everyone deserves a chance to thrive. The crucible of Anthony Albanese's journey from Camperdown to the corridors of power was forged in the lecture halls and student unions of the University of Sydney, where his worldview took shape and his political fire was stoked. As the first in his family to finish school and university, Albanese pursued a degree in economics, working multiple jobs to support himself and his mother, embodying the values of resilience and self-reliance that would define his leadership. The University of Sydney, renowned for its progressive spirit and intellectual rigor, became his second home, a place where ideas clashed, movements were born, and future leaders were molded. Albanese immersed himself in student politics, quickly rising to become a member of the Students' Representative Council and aligning with left-wing and labor movements. He was influenced by the vibrant debates of the time, the struggles for social justice, and the legacy of progressive leaders like Tom Oren, who later became his mentor. His time at university was not just academic. It was a crucible of activism, where Albanese learned to listen, debate, and mobilize skills that would become the bedrock of his political career. The economic theories he studied were not abstract concepts, but tools to understand and address the real world hardships he had witnessed growing up. Albanese's commitment to fairness, equity, and opportunity was sharpened by his experiences, both personal and political. He saw education not just as a ladder to personal success, but as a right that could transform lives and communities. By the time he graduated in 1984, Albanese was already a rising figure in the Labour Party, ready to channel his passion into public service and policy reform. His university years were the making of a leader driven by principle, shaped by adversity, and inspired by the belief that change is possible. The first steps from activist to advocate. Anthony Albanese's first foray into public life was not marked by grand speeches or instant fame, but by the quiet grind of grassroots activism and the determination to make a difference where it mattered most. After graduating from the University of Sydney, Albanese began his political journey as a research officer for Tom Oren, a Labour Party legend and mentor who shaped Albanese's early understanding of policy and public service. In this role, Albanese was immersed in the realities of local government, learning how legislation could impact everyday Australians and witnessing firsthand the power of advocacy. His early career was a blend of research, policy work, and organizational leadership. Albanese served as president of Young Labour in New South Wales, where he championed progressive causes and mobilized young people around issues like social justice and equality. He later became the Assistant General Secretary of the New South Wales Labour Party, a role that tested his ability to navigate complex internal politics and build coalitions across diverse factions. These experiences honed his skills in negotiation, communication, and strategic thinking qualities that would later define his leadership style. Albanese's rise was not without setbacks. Early campaigns were marked by narrow losses and tough lessons, but each failure only deepened his resolve. His work as a senior policy advisor to Premier Bob Carr further exposed him to the machinery of government and the challenges of translating ideals into action. Through these formative years, Albanese built a reputation as a principled advocate, someone who listened to communities and fought for their needs. By the mid-1990s, Albanese was ready for the next step, entering Parliament as the member for Grayndler, a seat he would hold for nearly 3 decades. His journey from activist to advocate was defined by perseverance, a commitment to service, and an unwavering belief that politics could be a force for good. The ascent from shadow to spotlight. Anthony Albanese's rise within the Australian Labour Party was neither swift nor guaranteed. It was a slow, determined climb marked by setbacks, resilience, and a relentless pursuit of relevance on the national stage. After years of service as a backbencher and policy advisor, Albanese began to emerge as a significant voice within the party, particularly during the tumultuous leadership battles between Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard from 2010 to 2013. He publicly called for unity, positioning himself as a pragmatic and unifying figure amid the internal chaos. His moment came in June 2013 when he was elected deputy leader of the Labour Party and sworn in as Deputy Prime Minister, though his tenure was cut short by Labour's defeat in that year's election. Undeterred, Albanese continued to build his influence, serving in key shadow cabinet roles such as Shadow Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Cities, and Regional Development. His expertise in infrastructure and communications earned him respect, and he delivered major policy initiatives, including plans for the national broadband network and national transport upgrades. Albanese's leadership style during this period was marked by a commitment to bipartisanship, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, when he supported the government's emergency response while holding it accountable. The turning point arrived in 2019, after Labour's unexpected defeat in the federal election. Bill Shorten resigned as party leader, and Albanese, the only candidate to formally nominate, was elected unopposed as leader of the opposition. As leader, he redefined Labour's messaging, focusing on fairness, economic reform, and a better future for all Australians. His campaign rallies drew large crowds, and his ability to connect with voters, especially those in regional and working class communities, helped restore Labour's momentum. Albanese's political rise was not just about ambition. It was about earning trust, navigating internal party politics, and demonstrating the resilience required to lead in a fractured landscape. His journey from the shadows to the spotlight set the stage for a defining chapter in Australian politics. The moment of destiny, victory in 2020 to the 2022 Australian federal election marked a pivotal turning point in Anthony Albanese's journey, a moment when years of perseverance, political navigation, and public service culminated in his ascent to the highest office in the land. After a decade of coalition rule, Australians were ready for change, and Albanese's Labor Party capitalised on a wave of hope and a yearning for stability following the tumultuous years of pandemic, natural disasters, and national crises. On May 21, 2022, Labor secured a decisive victory, winning 77 seats in the House of Representatives and forming a majority government for the first time since 2007. Albanese's triumph was historic. He became the 31st Prime Minister of Australia and the first Labor leader to win government from opposition since 2007. His campaign was defined by promises to end the climate wars, deliver economic recovery, and unite a fractured nation. The electorate responded to his vision of fairness, ambition, and opportunity for all, rejecting the status quo and embracing a new chapter for Australia. Albanese's victory speech in Sydney resonated with a nation hungry for leadership, grounded in empathy and principle. Australians have chosen hope and resilience, he declared, to confront global issues in a uniquely Australian manner. Sworn in as Prime Minister on May 23, 2022, Albanese faced immediate challenges rebuilding trust, restoring Australia's international reputation, and addressing urgent domestic issues like the cost of living and climate change. His leadership signaled a departure from the divisiveness of the past, focusing instead on unity, transparency, and progress. For Albanese, the victory was not just a personal achievement. It was a mandate to deliver for every Australian, to ensure no one was left behind. The moment marked the beginning of a new era, with Albanese at the helm, ready to shape Australia's destiny in a world of uncertainty and change. The first 100 days, setting the tone in Anthony Albanese's first 100 days as Prime Minister were a masterclass in decisive leadership and symbolic change, as he swiftly set the agenda for a new era in Australian politics. Immediately after his swearing-in on May 23, 2022, Albanese signalled a break from the past by appointing a diverse cabinet, including a record number of women and representatives from various backgrounds, reflecting his commitment to inclusivity and fairness. His early moves included the ratification of the Paris Agreement, a pledge to reset relations with China, and the initiation of landmark reforms in aged care, childcare, and climate policy. One of his first major legislative achievements was the passage of a bill to address the recommendations of the Royal Commission into aged care quality and safety, which overhauled funding models and introduced stricter transparency measures. He also enacted reforms to subsidize childcare for most families, guaranteeing a minimum of 3 days of subsidized care, a move that was widely celebrated by working parents. In health care, Albanese's government invested billions to triple the fee general practitioners receive for bulk billing, addressing a national decline in access to primary care Albanese's tone was one of unity and urgency. He launched the National Anti-Corruption Commission, signaling a commitment to integrity and accountability in government. His administration also took bold steps to address climate change, updating Australia's emissions targets and setting ambitious goals for carbon neutrality. By 2050, the Prime Minister's early engagement with Indigenous communities, including the push for an Indigenous voice to Parliament, underscored his dedication to reconciliation. Even though the referendum ultimately failed, the public response was mixed, with some praising Albanese's rapid reforms and others criticizing the pace and scope of change. Yet, his first 100 days laid the foundation for a government defined by action, transparency, and a relentless focus on improving the lives of everyday Australians. The reformers' mandate, domestic governance, and reform. Anthony Albanese's tenure as Prime Minister has been defined by an ambitious domestic reform agenda aimed at tackling some of Australia's most pressing challenges: affordable housing, healthcare, education, and social equity. Facing a housing crisis, Albanese's government launched the National Housing Accord, a sweeping initiative to build 1.2 million new homes over 5 years and simplify zoning laws to boost supply. The government also introduced significant rental assistance increases and established the Housing Australia Fund to ensure sustainable financing for social and affordable housing projects. In healthcare, Albanese's administration invested billions to triple bulk billing incentives for general practitioners, addressing a critical decline in access to primary care. The government opened 58 non-emergency urgent care clinics nationwide and expanded Medicare funding, including subsidized GP visits and new training programs for thousands of doctors. These reforms have been pivotal in improving health outcomes, especially for vulnerable communities. Education saw major reforms as well. Albanese reduced university education fees by 20% in his second term, making tertiary education more accessible. The government also expanded fee-free TAFE programs and supported transnational education initiatives, such as the establishment of Deakin University's campus in India, positioning Australia as a global leader in education innovation. Social welfare reforms have been equally transformative. The government enacted paid leave for victims of domestic violence, increased support for gig workers, and implemented gender pay gap reporting to promote workplace equality. The National Anti-Corruption Commission was created to restore integrity in government, while the Royal Commission into the robo-debt scheme delivered justice for those affected by previous policies. Albanese's governance style prioritizes evidence-based policy and collaboration with states and territories. His reforms have been praised for their scale and ambition, though critics argue that more needs to be done to address cost of living pressures and systemic inequalities. Nevertheless, Albanese's domestic agenda has left a lasting imprint on Australia's social and economic landscape, setting a new standard for progressive governance. The architect of diplomacy, global influence, and alliance. Anthony Albanese's tenure as Prime minister has seen Australia reassert its role as a skilled diplomat and a trusted partner on the world stage, marked by a renewed emphasis on multilateralism, regional cooperation, and strategic alliances. From the outset, Albanese prioritized repairing frayed international relationships, most notably with China, where his government successfully negotiated the lifting of trade barriers and restored high-level dialogue after years of tension under previous administrations. This diplomatic reset not only revived billions in trade but signaled Australia's return to a pragmatic, engagement-based foreign policy. Albanese's global footprint expanded rapidly. His first international trip as Prime Minister was to Tokyo, where he attended the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue Quad Summit, reaffirming Australia's commitment to regional security and collective action with the United States, India, and Japan. He also attended the NATO Madrid Summit and met with leaders in Europe, including French President Emmanuel Macron, to reset Australia-France relations after the contentious submarine deal fallout. Albanese's visit to Ukraine made him the first Australian Prime Minister to meet President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv, where he pledged substantial aid and support for Ukraine's sovereignty. A cornerstone of Albanese's foreign policy has been the AUKUS Security Pact, a trilateral agreement with the United States and the United Kingdom to bolster defense capabilities in the Indo-Pacific, including the procurement of nuclear-powered submarines to counter China's growing influence. Despite criticism from some quarters, Albanese's government has positioned Australia as a key player in shaping the region's security architecture. His administration has also deepened ties with Pacific Island nations, addressing their climate change concerns and supporting regional development initiatives. Albanese's diplomatic approach, marked by empathy, pragmatism, and a willingness to engage even with traditional rivals, has earned Australia renewed respect in international forums and strengthened its reputation as a constructive, forward-thinking global actor. The economic architect, building a resilient future. Anthony Albanese's economic leadership has been defined by bold reforms, targeted investments, and a relentless focus on improving the lives of everyday Australians. Facing a global inflation crisis and the aftermath of the pandemic, Albanese's government delivered a series of measures designed to stabilize the economy, create jobs, and relieve cost of living pressures. Tax cuts for all taxpayers, energy bill reliefs, and targeted support for small businesses have put more money in the pockets of millions, with an average tax reduction of over $2,500 per year for most households. A cornerstone of Albanese's economic strategy has been tackling Australia's housing crisis. His government launched the largest housing build in the nation's history, pledging to construct 1.2 million new homes over 5 years, including 55,000 social and affordable homes. The plan also introduced incentives for first home buyers, making it easier for young Australians to enter the property market with just a 5% deposit and exclusive access to new homes set aside for owner-occupiers. Rent assistance was increased by 45%, and efforts to cut red tape have streamlined construction processes, boosting supply and affordability. Albanese's administration also prioritized job creation and wage growth. Over the past 3 years, 1.1 million new jobs have been created, with the lowest average unemployment rate in 50 years. Real pay increases for award workers, a rise in the superannuation guarantee to 12%, and expanded support for apprentices and tradies have helped lift incomes and strengthen the workforce. The government's focus on infrastructure, clean energy, and low-emission manufacturing has positioned Australia as a leader in innovation and sustainability. Despite global headwinds, inflation has been halved and interest rates have been cut, signaling a return to stability. Albanese's economic vision, grounded in fairness, opportunity, and long-term growth, has set Australia on a path to prosperity, resilience, and renewed confidence in the future. The reformer's legacy, social welfare, and civil reform. Anthony Albanese's leadership has left an indelible mark on Australia's social landscape, with sweeping reforms designed to uplift the most vulnerable and empower communities across the nation. From the very beginning of his premiership, Albanese prioritized social equity, launching initiatives that touched the lives of millions, from families struggling with childcare, costs to workers seeking fair pay and security. One of his most transformative policies was the overhaul of the child care system. Albanese's government guaranteed a minimum of 3 days of subsidized care for most families, dramatically reducing the financial burden on parents and enabling more women to participate in the workforce. He also introduced paid leave for victims of domestic violence, a landmark move that provided critical support for those facing abuse and signaled a national commitment to ending gender-based violence. Albanese's administration strengthened protections for gig economy workers, ensuring they receive minimum wage guarantees and access to workplace rights. The government enacted gender pay gap reporting requirements for large employers, pushing for greater transparency and accountability in closing the wage gap. In the realm of aged care, Albanese responded to the findings of the Royal Commission by reforming funding models and mandating that all aged care facilities have registered nurses on site at all times, improving the quality of care for seniors. Social welfare reforms extended to housing and homelessness, with the National Housing Accord setting ambitious targets for new home construction and rent assistance increases. Albanese's government also launched initiatives to address Indigenous disadvantage, including targeted investments in health, education, and employment for First Nations communities. While the referendum for an Indigenous voice to Parliament was unsuccessful, Albanese's commitment to reconciliation remained a central theme of his leadership. Through these reforms, Albanese has redefined Australia's social contract, championing policies that promote fairness, opportunity, and dignity for all. His legacy in social welfare and civil reform is one of compassion, courage, and lasting change. The Green Revolution, Albanese's environmental Legacy. Anthony Albanese's tenure as Prime Minister has ushered in the most significant environmental reforms in Australia's history, marking a bold new era for climate action and ecological stewardship. In 2025, after months of negotiation with the Greens and crossbench senators, Albanese's government passed landmark legislation overhauling the nation's outdated environmental laws, a move hailed as a milestone for both nature and business. The reforms establish an independent National Environment Protection Agency, dramatically strengthening oversight and enforcement, while raising penalties for major breaches and closing loopholes that allowed unchecked land clearing and deforestation. Albanese's reforms also prioritize native forests, implementing stricter rules on land clearing and limiting the fast tracking of coal and gas projects, which had long been expedited under previous administrations. The new laws aim to accelerate renewable energy projects, essential minerals development, and housing initiatives, all while ensuring robust environmental safeguards. Albanese declared, "These laws are vital to protect our environment and to boost productivity in our economy," emphasizing that the changes would help Australia meet its climate targets and secure a sustainable future. The government also launched a multi-million-dollar fund to support forestry, growth and nature restoration, signaling a commitment to both economic and ecological renewal. Environmental advocates welcomed the reforms, particularly the enhanced protections for native forests and the removal of exemptions for high-risk land clearing activities. However, critics pointed out that new coal and gas projects still receive some approval flexibility, highlighting gaps that must be addressed in future legislation. Albanese's leadership on climate has been defined by pragmatism and ambition, balancing the needs of business with the urgent imperative to protect Australia's unique ecosystems. His environmental legacy is one of transformation, a nation stepping up to meet the challenges of the 21st century with courage, vision, and a renewed commitment to the planet. The diplomatic strategist navigating a fractured world, Anthony Albanese's leadership on the global stage has been defined by a bold, pragmatic, and highly visible diplomatic strategy, positioning Australia as a key player in an increasingly complex international order. From the outset, Albanese sought to stabilize strained relationships, most notably with China, where his government successfully negotiated the lifting of punitive tariffs and restored high-level dialogue after years of diplomatic chill. This reset not only revived billions in trade but signaled Australia's return to a balanced, engagement-based approach to foreign policy. Albanese's global footprint expanded rapidly. His first international trip as Prime Minister was to Tokyo for the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue Quad Summit, where he reaffirmed Australia's commitment to regional security alongside the United States, India, and Japan. He also attended the NATO Madrid summit and made a historic visit to Ukraine, becoming the first Australian Prime Minister to meet President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv, where he pledged substantial aid and support for Ukraine's sovereignty. Albanese's administration has deepened ties with Pacific Island nations, addressing their climate change concerns, and supporting regional development initiatives. A cornerstone of Albanese's foreign policy has been the AUKUS Security Pact, a trilateral agreement with the United States and the United Kingdom to bolster defense capabilities in the Indo-Pacific, including the procurement of nuclear-powered submarines to counter China's growing influence. Despite criticism from some quarters, Albanese's government has positioned Australia as a key player in shaping the region's security architecture. Albanese's diplomatic approach, marked by empathy, pragmatism, and a willingness to engage even with traditional rivals, has earned Australia renewed respect in international forums and strengthened its reputation as a constructive, forward-thinking global actor. His leadership has not only stabilized Australia's international relationships but also enhanced its influence in an era of global uncertainty. The architect of growth, economic achievements, Anthony Albanese's economic leadership has been marked by a series of bold reforms designed to stimulate growth, boost productivity, and improve living standards for all Australians. Facing a global economic slowdown and persistent inflation, Albanese's government introduced sweeping measures to support households, businesses, and the workforce, earning praise for its steady hand during turbulent times. A hallmark of Albanese's economic agenda has been his commitment to fairness. Every Australian taxpayer received tax cuts, with an average reduction of over $2,500 per year, putting more money in the pockets of working families and small businesses. The government also took direct action on the cost of living, reducing power bills by $150 for households and businesses, and cracking down on supermarket price gouging to ensure everyday essentials remain affordable. These measures, combined with targeted rent assistance and expanded support for single parents, have provided vital relief to millions. Albanese's administration prioritized job creation and wage growth, overseeing the creation of more than 1 million new jobs and delivering 5 consecutive quarters of real wage growth, the first sustained increase in years. His government strengthened workplace rights, enshrining same job, same pay laws and expanding flexibility for remote work, while also launching free TAFE programs to train the next generation of tradies and apprentices. These initiatives have helped to close skills gaps and support a resilient workforce. Innovation and infrastructure were also central to Albanese's vision. The government invested heavily in bulk billing, mental health centers, and urgent care clinics, ensuring Australians have access to affordable health care. It also launched the largest housing build in history, pledging to construct 1.2 million new homes and making home ownership more accessible for young Australians. By focusing on supply, affordability, and long-term investment, Albanese's economic reforms have laid the foundation for a stronger, more inclusive economy. The classroom revolution. Albanese's education reforms. Anthony Albanese's commitment to education has transformed Australia's public school system, setting a new standard for equity, quality, and opportunity. In 2025, his government achieved a historic milestone, Every state and territory signed agreements to put all public schools on a path to full and fair funding, fulfilling a promise made in the landmark Gonski Review. This agreement means a 70% increase in Commonwealth funding per student over the next decade, with every dollar tied to specific reforms designed to lift educational standards and close the gap for disadvantaged students. The Albanese government's reforms are ambitious and practical. Schools now implement mandatory Year 1 phonics and early numeracy checks to identify students who need extra support, ensuring no child is left behind in the foundational years of learning. Evidence-based teaching practices are prioritized, with targeted tutoring and small group interventions for students falling behind. The government has also expanded access to mental health professionals in schools, recognizing the critical link between well-being and academic success. A central goal of these reforms is to increase the proportion of students completing Year 12, aiming for the highest rate in Australian history by 2030. Other targets include reducing the number of students who need additional support in reading and numeracy, boosting attendance rates, and improving teacher recruitment and retention, especially in rural and remote areas. Albanese's government is investing in professional learning for teachers and introducing measures to attract and retain high-quality educators, ensuring every child has access to excellent instruction. These reforms are not just about funding, they are about creating a generation of confident, capable Australians equipped to thrive in a rapidly changing world. By prioritizing equity, evidence-based practice, and student well-being, Albanese's education revolution is building a brighter future for every child in Australia, healing a nation. Albanese's healthcare revolution. Anthony Albanese's leadership has ushered in the most ambitious healthcare reforms in Australia's recent history, transforming Medicare and revitalizing the public health system to meet the needs of a changing nation. In 2025, his government pledged a record $8.5 billion investment to strengthen Medicare, the largest single boost since the program's inception over 40 years ago. This commitment is designed to ensure that 9 out of every 10 visits to general practitioners are bulk billed by 2030, making healthcare more accessible and affordable for all Australians. Albanese's reforms have already delivered tangible results. The government opened 87 Medicare urgent care clinics, far exceeding its initial target, providing timely medical care and reducing pressure on emergency departments. Billions have been invested to increase bulk billing incentives for GPs, encouraging more doctors to offer free consultations and helping to reverse years of declining access. The reforms also include hundreds of new nursing scholarships and thousands of training opportunities for aspiring doctors, addressing workforce shortages and strengthening the healthcare pipeline. Public hospitals have received an additional $1.7 billion, bringing the total Commonwealth contribution to a record $33.91 billion for 2025 to 26. This funding is targeted at reducing waiting lists, cutting emergency department ramping, and improving patient care across the country. Albanese's government has also prioritized women's health, allocating over $573 million for initiatives that expand access, lower costs, and improve outcomes for women and families. Despite these achievements, Albanese's healthcare agenda has not been without controversy. Some state and territory leaders have criticized the pace and scale of funding, arguing that more is needed to address systemic challenges. Nevertheless, Albanese's reforms have set a new benchmark for public health in Australia, reaffirming the nation's commitment to universal, equitable, and high-quality care. His vision is clear: a stronger Medicare for every Australian. Now and in the future, the Green Mandate, Albanese's environmental. Anthony Albanese's environmental legacy is defined by bold, science-driven policies that have reshaped Australia's approach to climate action and ecological protection. In 2025, Albanese announced an ambitious new emissions target, a 60% to 70% reduction by 2035 compared to 2005 levels, a dramatic increase from previous goals and a commitment grounded in scientific evidence. This target is supported by sweeping reforms, including the creation of an independent National Environment Protection Agency, stricter rules on land clearing, and higher penalties for environmental violations. Albanese's government has also made landmark moves to expand protected areas, safeguarding an additional 100 million hectares of land and ocean to meet the commitment of protecting 30% of Australia's landmass by 2030. The size of Macquarie Island Marine Park has been tripled, and funding for national parks like Kokodu and Uluru has doubled, ensuring these iconic landscapes receive the care and attention they deserve. Proposals for major coal mines, including Clive Palmer's Queensland project, have been blocked, and new investments have been made to protect threatened species and combat invasive pests. The reforms have not only benefited the environment, but also enhanced business certainty, streamlining approval processes for renewable energy, housing, and critical minerals projects while ensuring robust ecological safeguards. Albanese's administration has worked closely with First Nations communities, recognizing the value of Indigenous knowledge and environmental stewardship. While critics argue that more must be done to stop new fossil fuel projects, Albanese's reforms have set a new benchmark for environmental protection in Australia. Albanese's Green Mandate is a testament to his belief that environmental action and economic growth are not mutually exclusive, but can be powerful partners in building a sustainable future for all Australians. The global balancer, Albanese's diplomatic master Anthony Albanese's foreign policy has been defined by a delicate balancing act, navigating the shifting sands of global power, strengthening alliances, and safeguarding Australia's interests in an era of uncertainty. In 2025, Albanese's government maintains Southeast Asia and the Pacific as top priorities, intensifying economic engagement and deepening security cooperation with key partners like Indonesia and the Philippines. His administration upgraded Australia-Philippines relations to a strategic partnership, culminating in the largest deployment of Australian troops to Southeast Asia since 2006, signaling a renewed commitment to regional stability. Albanese's leadership on the world stage has also been marked by pragmatic diplomacy. With major powers, he oversaw the easing of tensions with China, successfully negotiating the removal of trade embargoes and reopening vital channels of dialogue, all while standing firm against interference in Australia's domestic affairs. At the same time, Albanese reaffirmed the importance of the US alliance, administering the commencement of the AUKUS Security Pact and securing critical mineral export agreements with the United States to counter China's dominance in global markets. His approach has been both strategic and transactional, highlighting mutual benefits to maintain strong ties with Washington while resisting unilateralism. On the global front, Albanese has taken bold stands on humanitarian issues, including Australia's recognition of the State of Palestine and calls for a ceasefire in the Gaza war, often in partnership with New Zealand and other like-minded nations. He has also led Australia's engagement in multilateral forums, such as the Quad and APEC, promoting a peaceful, stable, and prosperous Indo-Pacific. Albanese's diplomatic mastery lies in his ability to balance competing interests, uphold Australia's sovereignty, and champion a rules-based global order. His leadership has positioned Australia as a trusted, independent voice on the world stage. The economic visionary, building a prosperous future. Anthony Albanese's economic vision for Australia is rooted in fairness, opportunity, and resilience, aiming to lift living standards for all Australians while positioning the nation for long-term prosperity. In the face of global volatility, Albanese's government has delivered steady leadership, having inflation, boosting wages, and lowering interest rates, all while creating 1.1 million new jobs and achieving the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years. His administration has focused on practical reforms, investing in skills, education, infrastructure, and energy to ensure that Australians are rewarded for their hard work and can build secure futures for themselves and their families. Albanese's economic agenda is defined by bold initiatives to address inequality and stimulate growth. His government has introduced tax cuts for every taxpayer, energy bill relief, and targeted support for small businesses, putting more money in the pockets of working families. The largest housing build in Australian history is underway, with 1.2 million new homes pledged to tackle the affordability crisis, alongside rent assistance increases and expanded support for first home buyers. Albanese's administration has also strengthened workplace rights, introduced same-job, same-pay laws, and expanded free TAFE programs to equip Australians with the skills needed for emerging industries. Albanese's economic strategy extends beyond immediate relief to long-term transformation. He has prioritized productivity, launching a national roundtable with business, union, and civil society leaders to address key challenges and drive innovation. The government has also deepened economic ties with global partners, including India, to secure supply chains, create jobs, and maximize trade opportunities. Albanese's vision is clear: a diversified, decentralized economy that rewards effort, nourishes aspiration, and provides the security Australians need to thrive. His leadership has set Australia on a path to sustained growth, opportunity, and shared prosperity. The education architect, building a fairer future. Anthony Albanese's education reforms have redefined Australia's approach to learning, making quality education a right for every child and a pillar of national progress. In 2025, his government fulfilled a decade-long promise. Every public school in Australia is now on a path to full and fair funding, with the Commonwealth increasing its contribution to 25% of the schooling resource standard by 2034. This historic agreement ensures that every dollar is tied to meaningful reforms, targeted support for struggling students, evidence-based teaching, and expanded mental health services in schools. Albanese's vision extends beyond funding. His administration has mandated Year 1 phonics and numeracy checks to identify students who need extra help, introduced intensive tutoring for those falling behind, and prioritized well-being by increasing access to mental health professionals. The government is also investing in teacher recruitment and retention, launching professional learning programs and initiatives to attract more educators to rural and remote areas. Ambitious targets have been set, including the highest proportion of students receiving a Year 12 certificate in history and a 10% reduction in students needing additional support by 2030 for higher education. Albanese's government has cut student debt by 20%, wiping close to $20 billion from the shoulders of more than 3 million Australians. The government has also launched the Australian Tertiary Education Commission to oversee reforms, aiming to double the number of domestic university students by 2050 while improving quality and equity. Early childhood education is another priority, with a 3-day guarantee, ensuring that every child receives at least 3 days of subsidized early education each week, expanding access and affordability for families across the country. Albanese's education revolution is about more than policy. It's about opening doors of opportunity for every Australian child, regardless of background or circumstance. His reforms are building a fairer, brighter future for generations to come. A lasting legacy. Albanese's final impact. Anthony Albanese's tenure as Prime Minister will be remembered as a transformative era for Australia, a time of bold reforms, historic achievements, and a renewed sense of national purpose. His leadership steered the nation through turbulent global crises, from economic volatility to climate emergencies, leaving behind a legacy of resilience, fairness, and ambition. Albanese became the first Australian Prime Minister into decades to secure a second consecutive 3-year term, marking a dramatic resurgence for the Labour Party and a mandate for progressive change. Albanese's government delivered Australia's first budget surplus in 15 years, tackled the housing affordability crisis with a historic 1.2 million home build and made sweeping reforms to education, healthcare, and social welfare. His environmental legacy is defined by ambitious climate targets, a landmark overhaul of environmental laws, and the protection of vast tracts of land and ocean. On the world stage, Albanese reset Australia's diplomatic relationships, strengthened regional alliances, and championed a rules-based global order. Despite challenges including the unsuccessful Indigenous voice referendum and ongoing debates over trust in government, Albanese's leadership has been defined by empathy, pragmatism, and a relentless commitment to the Australian people. His reforms have empowered millions, from students and workers to families and seniors, and his vision has set Australia on a path to long-term prosperity and unity. Albanese's legacy is not just measured in policies or statistics, but in the hope and opportunity he has restored to the Australian spirit. He leaves behind a nation more resilient, more equitable, and more confident in its future, a testament to the power of leadership grounded in principle, compassion, and courage.